Time for us to get started. So we have a couple of speakers today. I'm going to kick this off. I'm from a company called Cisco. That is CISCO. We are a computer networking company. I'm joined here by Flora. Hi, Flora. Flora runs our My Innovation program, which just got a gold award last night. So congratulations, Flora, and congratulations for running it. And what I really wanted to do is talk about kind of how do we drive a cultural change in a big company, if that's at all possible, right? And how do we approach this at Cisco, and what are some challenges that we see ahead of us and with our customers, and what are some of the best practices to go and overcome those difficulties. And when I look at Flora, talk to Flora, because she's facing she's dealing with cross-functionally across the company with practically every single function to drive innovation, right? And in a big company, that really means a lot. So just to set the stage, this is a slide that I kind of use. I've been using it for the last 10 years. But this slide is very much accurate. When we look at the mortality rate of large companies, right, they suddenly go out of business, right? So if we think about there's a proven market trend, which is big companies go out of business suddenly because of their failure to innovate, right? And it almost happens overnight. And it's not necessarily that startups are taking their place, right? It's really about that the startups are as mortal as big companies, if not more. It's just the fact that the big companies are acting slowly and are not necessarily embracing the change, right? Because we're so focused on our success and on our mission, and when we become big and when we become older, just as people, right, we stop listening because we know everything, right? And that's actually what's happening with a lot of companies. I mean, when I look at Enron, for example, that was probably too innovative when it comes to tax accounting and document keeping, right? But at the same time, I know a lot is said about the Blockbuster, but at the same time, that's the company that just never believed that something will go digital, right? And I remember my personal story many, many years ago. I was working for a company called Napster, and we truly believed that we're going to change the world. We did. We never survived as a company. And a recruiter called me. He said, you know, Alex, I understand you work for Napster, but there's this little small company in Palo Alto, and they need somebody to pull some operations together. And I said, what's the company? And they said, Facebook. And then I remember I was so arrogant because I lectured the recruiter. I educated him that MySpace already exists, right? And who needs Facebook if there's MySpace, right? So it's interesting how all of us, we just do not accept certain realities, right? Because we have this tunnel vision. Same thing like public utilities never thought that they would be disrupted, not by regulators, but by solar. But their revenues are actually going down. I mean, their revenue model, let me put it this way, is impacted because there's solar power. And I remember I was talking to another public utility, and they have an innovation lab. And I said, why do you have an innovation lab? And they're like, well, who knows? There might be other ways of putting us out of business, right? So it's important that, that we think about that. Because when we look at the SAP and just look at the big company list, there are new companies there, and with more and more IPOs, there will be more players, and it's getting very competitive, it's getting overheated, and it's getting very confusing for traditional players that are not necessarily glamorous, or players that feel that they work in a highly regulated industry like healthcare or life sciences, and yet they can be disrupted. So if I think about all of this kind of stagnation of big companies, I think all of us, we really know why big companies go out of business. I mean, there are many reasons, but at the end of the day, this is the primary reason. Right? And when I say big company, by the way, I mean why countries become less competitive, why cities do not attract trade, right? At the end of the day, It's we get into something and we're very comfortable, and then something moves and it's a bit too late, right? And when I think about this manager of new growth ideas, right? This is where innovation comes. Actually, innovation is everywhere, right? But it's really about how do you keep looking into tomorrow while you focus on today, and it's very uncomfortable, right? Because there's a lot of anxiety from unknown. Why focus on it if things are working well? So some of the observation how we can change that, because it's our job to do that, right? This green box is a couple of things. One is I think it's essential to communicate urgency. I think from if you look at companies, I think middle managers are the best who understand that something needs to change, because they sit between the leadership that sets big agendas and kind of vision statements, right? And then you have employees, right? And you're in between of that, and you need to go and communicate the urgent case for innovation. So we're in networking business. If I think about our business case and enabling our customers, everything is connected, right? There's actually, I was just reading up an article yesterday, but there are more connected devices than humans on the planet, which is very interesting because half of the world is not connected to the internet, right? I mean, there's a tremendous opportunity ahead of us. If we think about the kind of what drives the market, and again, it goes back to democratizing innovation, and the fact that everybody can go in and displace a big player. It's the mobile apps. When we think about iPhone, it's a wonderful invention. We don't even know what the consequences of that are yet to our society, and it changes everything from dating to shopping, right? And the way our children learn. But the biggest thing is the App Store, right? It created a virtual marketplace where everyone can pretty much publish an app. And I know at a certain point, many people here thought about what is the app that I can create and make millions like other people do, but it's a reality, and that app can take companies out of business. It doesn't cost a lot of money to go in business, so there's a lower barrier to entry in any field. You don't have to have space. You can work out of WeWork. You don't have to have any equipment. You procure Amazon Cloud Services, right? If you want to hire somebody, you can hire people in a lower cost market. You can deploy products overnight, right? So it costs practically nothing. And then there's plenty of capital, right? There's a lot of funny money in Silicon Valley, right? So when you think about, and there's more money than ideas. So if you think about it, that's a prime, these are prime conditions for disruptions, right? There's plenty of opportunities to experiment, and there are a lot of people that don't want to go in traditional roles, work for a large company, right? And it's really funny because in the past, large company meant stability. Right now, it's like large company is instability. We don't really necessarily know what's going on and what's the direction. So I think it's important to realize and accept that. I think the second one is about innovating, right? A lot of people talk about cultural transformation or innovating. I think it's essential that we understand why, and we have a very clear business case, and we'll talk more about that. But unless you're on the R&D team, or you're a serial inventor, if you're running a business innovating for the sake of innovating, it may not necessarily be a good idea, right? Because at the end of the day, innovation is something that impacts your company goals. So it's important to tie what you're doing. You have a clear business case. Why do this, right? Why have this cultural transformation? So when we think about kind of the big statements, right? Why innovate? At the end of the day, big companies innovate. These are all very good statements, right? It's customers, growth, competition, talent, work conditions, right? But at the end of the day, when we think about companies, company is a business, right? So at the end of the day, the company innovates to provide value to shareholders. And if we provide value to shareholders, then we're in business and we can do all those things. So companies innovate because of, at the end of the day, it's about growth or cost avoidance. And what I really want to point out that innovation is as essential to new products as it is for process. So when Flora runs the Innovate Everywhere program at Cisco, what we discover, a lot of our employees, they don't tell us we need to build a new router, right? They talk to us, hey, we actually have this silly process. I think it costs us a lot of money, and probably we shouldn't be doing it, right? And that's a lot of opportunity for innovation there. Right, and obviously when we think about, again, being in a networking business, when you think about that half of the world is not connected, and you have everything from security to privacy to connected weight scales, there are a lot of opportunities for innovation. And I think generally, we as a society right now at the point where we really want to take a better care of our planet. And again, I'm going to mention Flora because we were talking about this last night. It's how do we use technology for good? So that's a great purpose to innovate. So understanding what the innovation is about and why is essential. The other thing, a lot of companies are innovating already. And some of it is fake innovation. And I think it's important that we understand, again, there's nothing wrong with innovation celebration, right? It's a very good team building exercise, but I think it's very important that we realize where our money is going in terms of innovation activities and what outcomes do we get from it, right? So if you're in a typical corporate environment, there's a manager that says, be innovative. I mean, what does this really mean, right? What are the practical things that you want your team to do? What are the outcomes? How it moves the metric? And when you think, I think a good test for fake innovation is it's innovation for the sake of innovation. It doesn't move any corporate metrics, right? So for example, at Cisco, before we launched this program of kind of doing cross-functional innovation, and I'll talk about, or actually, not doing cross-functional innovation, but enabling innovators cross-functionally, we really talked to our employees about what innovation is for them. And what we've learned is in a company of 74,000 people, we have two classes, innovators and not innovators. And innovators are the people that work in engineering, because they create products that sell. Of course they're innovators, right? We create best products in the world when it comes to networking, connectivity, so many great things. But what about 50,000 other people, right? Because they work in marketing and sales and logistics and procurement, human resources. They're innovators too. And it's essential that, and what we've heard from them, it's like, if I'm not an engineer and I have an idea, I don't have any vehicles to go and take it to the market. And then really, if I have an idea which is outside of my team's function, nobody really cares, right? So we do a lot of innovation celebration, but at the end of the day, we don't follow through. And I think, again, going back to the test, there is a lot of idea celebration. Ideas are good. Ideas are great. Probably all of the ideas are known, right, in the world. When you go to a venture capital firm and you say, hey, I have an idea, they say, wonderful. Who's on your team, right? And who's on your team essential, because to them it's all about the execution. So following through on employee ideas is actually a good differentiator from, is that really a fake innovation, or is this more of a continuous process improvement? The other one is about the ecosystem. So when we think about, generally when we think about innovation, innovation does not happen in the four walls of anything, right? Invention might, right? So there is a lonely inventor, absolutely. You sit under the apple tree and then the apple hits your head and you come up with an idea and the world has changed. True, but when it comes to innovation, it really requires the ecosystem. So if I think about generally Cisco's philosophy, and this drives a lot of the internal culture change, is how we work with others. So we have this premise that no single company can do this alone. What this really means is we build stuff, right? So we have a large engineering organization, as I said, 24,000 people. We spend significant amount on R&D, and this is where we work on the products of today and tomorrow. Great. Then we acquire companies, This is 201. This is a bit old slide. I'm sure it's 211 now or something like that. We do a lot of acquisitions, and then we bring that knowledge into Cisco. And our goal is to retain that talent, right, and retain that knowledge. We partner with a lot of companies. When I say partner, it's not only about channel. It's not about distribution, right, or sales. It's about co-innovation as well. For example, we're in discussions with some of our large partners about how we're going to co-innovate with them so that we create solutions for the market. And when you have local partners, that really allows us to come up with ideas and scale. We invest. Cisco is a very large investor. Lately, we've been investing in accelerators, which really allows us to go and work with startups. And then the last one is we co-develop at the innovation centers. And what we try to do is get our employees engaged across all of these activities, right? Because when you think about the large company, there are two great things about there are many great things about large companies, but I think two are essential. It's the knowledge base of all employees, if they're connected, right? Because together we know so many great things, right? And then the second one is when we execute as one function, as one big company, right? As one entity, we can achieve amazing things. So we understand that we can achieve amazing things when we work with others. The reason we really like this methodology is not only we're focused on today, right, but we actually are able to go and scan the marketplace. The second one is if we have a good idea, we can test it out on the market quickly. And then at the end of the day, because we engage the partner ecosystem, we can create end-to-end solutions and take something to market in many countries, right? And we're able to capture local innovation and scale it globally. Next advice that we've learned, right, is the ditch company politics and bring everyone together. So I was actually thinking about that a lot. Before Cisco, I worked for a startup. And now I feel that I'm lucky to work in a team at Cisco, which is like a startup. So what is like a startup, right? At the end of the day, when you think about startup, startup is a team sport. Everybody's on the same team, and everyone is playing together. When you look at any large organization, it's a political process. Right? Generally, it's an attribute, right? It's just a political process. So it's very interesting that I think for a lot of innovation team or teams that enable others, it's essential that we bring everyone together. So I have this thing on top there, which is facilitate and be invisible. So I see a lot of politics in the innovation world where innovation teams step up and they always say, we are the innovators. And then there's a third class of innovators, right? Then now there's an innovation team and all the other teams, so what are the other teams doing, right? They're not innovators, right? So I think it's essential that the innovation teams, they actually enable and operations team, right? Operations team are about enabling other people's success. So when I think about innovation, it's all about how we help others and how we enable them. So at Cisco, we've built a variety of programs. And when I say built, we've actually kind of pulled them all together from the place where everybody could go, the hub, a place where everybody can learn what's going on when it comes to broad topic of innovation. In a company of 74,000 people and 140 locations, that means a lot. We run a challenge. I'll talk about that in a minute. We have a number of training offerings that are particularly around innovation that are very practical. That means, and pragmatic. That means that you don't look at the VOD. You get to actually experiment with a customer, which sounds scary. But what we've discovered actually leads to revenue and employer retention, so many great things. We created a mentor network. Some incubation spaces that we're experimenting with, but most importantly, we really somewhat got our company on the same page when it comes to what are the priorities that we need to innovate on. Which really leads me to redefining innovation, right? I've talked about the fact that in order to run anything cross-company, every employee needs to have a role. So in order for every employee to have a role, you need to redefine innovation. You need to just say that innovation could be about continuous improvement, it could be about cost avoidance, it could be about shorter line in the cafeteria. In fact, I would argue if the employees in the company cannot shorten the line in the cafeteria, it's highly unlikely that they will be able to launch a new groundbreaking product, right? Because at the end, it's about the ability for a company to listen to employees and execute. So in order to empower our employees, we built this framework, which basically is focused on kind of two pillars. One is transformation. This is all about how do we engage every single employee and communicate to them about innovation, what innovation is and isn't. And there's a metric, right? And the metric is very simple. How many people actually go there and check it out, and do they really care about what the company's agenda is when it comes to innovation, right? So we measure it. And then when we think about empowering, okay, so everybody knows that these are the priorities, we should innovate on it, we might be interested. So there is an offer, or there's an awareness of the offer. So then it's empower. We create, basically it's about training, it's about coaching and network, it's about opportunities for employees to go and engage. And these opportunities could be with mentoring other employees, teams, or startups. For example, in the United Kingdom, we have an innovation center where we extending opportunities to our employees to go and run and mentor startups, which really connects Cisco with the outside world on an employee level, and it brings a lot of energy back to Cisco, where people are going and saying, hey, we got to do things differently. And that's exactly what we want. We want those ideas. And then we accelerate. So we run the Innovate Everywhere Challenge. I'll talk about that in a minute. It sounds like fun and games. It is fun and games, but at the end of the day, it's actually a process, a replicable process that we've been running for 4 years, where nearly 60% of our workforce is continuously participating. And we take their ideas to market, and we measure that in revenue, right? So at the end of the day, activations, how many people are actually proceeding with their ideas? And then, are these ideas going into the market? And the market is internal and external. It could be a new product, could be just a new process, could be a shorter line in the cafeteria, right? Because it all matters when it comes to culture. And then when you think about giving everybody an opportunity, we do not look for inventors. We appreciate the inventors. Our company is, our company has roots in technological invention. We're actually looking for teams, meaning if you're a lonely innovator with an idea, it's unlikely we're going to review it. And if you do not have a cross-functional team, we're not going to review it either, because we know that teams of 5 engineers are unlikely to take product to the market, right? And teams of 5 marketing people are unlikely to create a product, right? It's like a real startup, right? So it's all about creating that cross-functional collaboration. When I talked about the value of a big company, it's all about, because big companies are siloed, it's about breaking those silos. And then explaining that a founder needs other people to be successful, because that's the difference between inventor and innovator. An innovator is somebody who enables other, or who is willing to embrace that team and go and take something to the market. Invention is not necessarily going to the market, right? So it's ensuring that everybody feels that they're an innovator. And then really talking about inclusion and diversity. I think every large company talks about inclusion and diversity. But at the end of the day, innovation is about inclusion and diversity. Because what innovation is an ability to solve a problem, or come up with a solution, or identify a problem from different points of view. So inclusion and diversity comes from teams only, and when people work together and when they welcome dissent. And I think at Cisco, it's pretty easy. Sometimes we argue with each other, right? And in a global company, that's actually easy, because you have people that are in different places. They're working remotely. They're in different countries. So that really allows us to go and focus on the core. And the core is not about the product. It's about the people and developing their skills, right? Because we keep saying that everything is about, big companies are about talent. Well, innovation is about talent. So that's why we build programs that at the end of the day are not focused on products. They're focused on creating an environment where innovators can take those products to markets. And that's why I talk about the line to the cafeteria, because it's enabling innovators. The other thing that we do, which I think is very essential, going back to my first thing about the business case, we connect employees to strategy. So when people say innovate on something, it's essential that we as a company know what we want to innovate on. So again, when we run this challenge, we talk about what is our innovation ambition for each of these markets, or technologies or business models. And that allows us, A, to actually understand what it is and get on the same page, and B, move it forward, right? And that's essential. And then when we think about the replicable process, having a bold vision and executing in small measurable milestones is essential. There's a lot of belief like, oh, this is innovation, therefore leave us alone and don't measure us, come back in 5 years. That's actually, innovation requires pressure. If you look at the way VC world works, it works very differently, right? You're on a milestone. If you don't hit the milestone, you don't get venture funding. So when we think about, again, the way we run challenge, it runs on the milestones, which creates pressure, not only on our business, but on our employees and the teams to go and come up with their ideas and execute something within the structured process where things are tied to metrics and outcomes, and there are rewards. And I think that's the essential thing. And the word transparent here is essential, because if you have an idea and that idea is not going to go forward, we will actually close the loop with you and say why. And what we've learned is, people might get upset, but at the end of the day, they will pivot. Say, yeah, okay, this doesn't fit with Cisco business. Great idea, but doesn't fit with Cisco business. Let us work on something else, right? And then it's really a learning and developing opportunity. So at the end of the day, what we are really trying to do, and I think where we're successful, we think about this employee engagement, talent as a core pillar. We're able to tie corporate priorities. We have the executive support. We've activated coaches and mentors inside and outside company, because it's equally important. We've made it fun and games. Fun and games is essential, especially in large company, right? You got to have some fun. And we provide resources and tools. So at the end of the day, it's something that creates a network, which is value, and it's measured in practical business outcomes. So what I was hoping to share with you, and I'm happy to, I'll be here over lunch. I know we have more great speakers to talk about what we're doing, but I'm happy to talk to you about what we've learned at Cisco. We have white papers available on how we've done this. It's a journey. We keep innovating. We keep changing this. And happy to help you in any way I can. And if I'll leave you at this last slide, year after year, we're getting those numbers. Right? And it's incredible that employees care about this, because the minute that they understand that their voice is heard, they're actually giving their ideas to the company. And we're doing something about making their ideas happen. And when we can't, we tell them why, or we try to tell them why. Thank you so much. That's a thoughtful ending to this. Questions, comments? Please.
I'm curious to learn more about how you're structured, and particularly how you relate to continuous improvement or operational excellence. Is it kind of one team? Do you do both? Are they separate?
So we're a part of engineering right now, but generally we're lucky to have our own operations teams, right? So when you think about continuous improvements, I think because Cisco is such a large company, we have that in every function, right? Because there's one for engineering, another one is supply chain, another one in other functions. I think cross-functionally we work with pretty much every organization at Cisco, and what we try to do is align to their goals, right? At the end of the day, if there is a continuous improvement organization, we would say, what are your innovation ambitions, and how we can communicate it to other employees.
So on the last slide, you mentioned 4,000 or 5,000 ideas that you over a period of time. How did you reject an idea without demotivating an employee?
Without what?
Demotivating an employee?
Oh, we talked about this for a long time, right? So, there's, Flora, can I redirect this question to you, actually? Am I putting you on the... How do we reject the ideas without demotivating the employee? By giving them feedback? And what do you think?
So we don't necessarily reject the ideas. So how it works initially is the ideas, we have a call to action for employees to submit ideas. Employees get to participate or kind of put an angel hat on and invest. They're given tokens. They can invest in the ideas that they sort of see potential in. Those ideas, so there's a threshold of 200 tokens. So from that point, those ideas advance to a selection round, and then we've got judges that there's up to 800 judges that review these ideas. So from a rejection perspective, we encourage teams that if they believe strongly in their idea to continue with the process. And so what we've actually seen is that we've had teams that didn't advance to the finals, for example, and yet were successful in taking their product to market and actually having real impact. So from a rejection perspective, and Alex mentioned, we provide feedback, right? We get them in touch many times with the judges, we get them in touch with the coaches, the mentors, people on our team across Cisco that can help them continue building these ideas. So sort of a soft answer to that, but the truth is there really isn't a level of rejection because we keep the dialogue open with these teams, and many of them actually come back the following year and submit their idea again. So they've gone back, taken the feedback, built it a bit stronger, and submit it through.
And
We've seen some of those teams continue on.
maybe I can add, not on a soft message, there's pre-filtering. Basically, with the tokens, if you can't convince your fellow coworkers to vote for your idea, we're not reading it. Because guess what? You're not going to be able to implement it, right? Which is another thing. We're not looking for people to give us ideas. We're looking for teams that are willing to step up and rotate into temporary jobs or with assistance go get these ideas done. So if you just want to give us an idea, thanks but no thanks. Next, right? So that's how we look at this.
The other thing too is that if we were to go back and look at those teams that didn't move forward, many of them is because they were all in the same organization. And the truth is, we do look at, the judges do look at that cross-functional makeup of your team. And we limit it to 5 people because the truth is any more than that, it's just everyone's got an idea and you're never going to get anywhere. And so the most successful teams have been truly those that have representation across all functions, from HR, finance, engineering, sales, et cetera, because you need buy-in from all of those groups to be successful.
Please.
So I think that kind of started to answer the question I had, but I was trying to figure out how does this work in alignment with your regular execution of regular business priorities? Like how do they align? So you talked a little bit about people rotating out of their job to continue to carry the idea forward. Like how does it fit into your regular business operations and execution?
So there's 2 things that you're bringing up that are exceptional. One is we're looking for ideas that are net new. So meaning it cannot be a part of your, this is not a mechanism to go and jumpstart, to elevate your project to the CEO level, right? Has to be a new idea. And then relative to rotating into other jobs, so we provide money for backfill. So there's corporate money for backfill, but obviously you can imagine that people that are doing this, sometimes they're top performers, sometimes they're not. So there is an individual manager conversation involved, right? Because all of a sudden you have, hey, I have somebody who's actually working on this project, and all of a sudden he's working on this thing, right? So it's a negotiation with managers and getting them on board, because when people rotate to other jobs, especially if they're top performers, or when they're faced with that choice, it's a difficult decision for everybody involved, because there's a risk. Yeah? Please. So there's a number of things. It's really, cash, recognition, and an opportunity to implement the idea and be heard by others. And when we look, and cash is significant. It's actually, when we think about the large teams, Flora, it's, what's the grant, 20,000, what's the big one?
So it's $25,000, we've got this recognition system, so there's that, which is true cash to them, and then there's also seed funding that they get. So they get $25,000 plus. As an organization, will match what their executives, what their sponsors offer as well, up to a certain amount.
But $25,000 tax-free, it's net cash, right? Cisco would pick up the taxes. And what we've learned is the recognition and ability to implement the ideas is on top. Cash is not the biggest incentive. It's great. I mean, we've seen teams that donate cash to charity and make a statement with this. And of course, I mean, and then, yeah, they want to bring it home. And at the same time, there are bigger purposes, and what we're seeing, there are a lot of people that innovate for a bigger purpose. Please.
How did you come to the timeline of the challenge versus a short burst hackathon?
Sorry, challenge versus what?
A short burst kind of hackathon event where you innovate over 2 or 3 days.
So my worry, so personally, my worry with hackathons is they do not necessarily. Actually, let me restate this. In a large company, you need to get others on board, right? And getting others on board requires time and purpose. So when you think about hackathon, it's, in my opinion, it's not enough time to go and socialize and understand how this aligns with priority, find an executive and hold that person accountable, because there's a lot of noise, right? So this is a lengthier process where we can go and we can go to execs and say, hey, not only we have a team, we have a market test, we have a customer, we have an opportunity. So there is a significant better tie to the business. I'm not saying that hackathons are a bad idea. We do hackathons at Cisco to educate people on our technology. The other thing we do is patentathons, which is IP harvesting, where we go and we encourage people to look at what's patentable. Right, so there are other ways that we use hackathons for the business. I feel this really this process, although lengthier, allows us to go and marry this to the business model of the company.
Part of that too, if you look at the timeline, is 6 weeks of a validation period. So that is where these teams are truly identifying who their extreme users are, right? Not necessarily working on the solution, but really identifying whether or not this really is a need and a problem. And so with the hackathon, what we have found is that many of the teams, so we kind of work in partnership too, is that the teams that come forward and participate in these global hackathons, then if they really, see that this will work, they'll then, progress it and proceed forward through this mechanism of the challenge. So it's a great partnership.
Yeah, it's a pipeline into this. Actually, yeah. If we think about the hackathon, like IT gives us results of their hackathons and take it for the process. And by the way, I know we're coming back here and there's lunch. I'm happy to talk to everyone here. I just want to make sure you guys are not starving.
Thank you.
But yeah.